Hello everyone and welcome back to Dreadful Diaries. I know many of you use these videos to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the video. Story number 1. The sun dipped below the horizon as Jonathan Blake drove up the winding path to Blackwood Manor, the ancestral home he had inherited from his late grandmother. The estate loomed ahead, its Gothic architecture silhouetted against the twilight sky. Jonathan had always been drawn to the stories of his family's past, and now, as a successful author, he hoped to find inspiration within the manor's walls. As he stepped out of his car, a chill ran down his spine. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the rustling of leaves in the wind. He grabbed his suitcase and made his way to the grand entrance, the heavy wooden door creaking open as if welcoming him back after years of absence. Inside, the manor was a labyrinth of dark wood, faded wallpaper, and dust-covered furniture. Jonathan felt a strange mix of nostalgia and unease as he explored the rooms, each filled with remnants of a bygone era. He set up his writing desk in the library, surrounded by towering shelves of books that seemed to whisper secrets of their own. That night, as he settled into bed, he was jolted awake by a faint whispering sound. He strained to listen, but the words were indistinguishable, like a distant conversation carried by the wind. Shaking off the feeling of dread, he convinced himself it was just his imagination playing tricks on him. The following days were filled with strange occurrences. Flickering lights danced in the corners of his vision, and shadows flitted past the windows when he was certain he was alone. Each night, the whispers grew louder, echoing through the halls, calling to him. Jonathan felt an inexplicable pull to uncover the manor's history, convinced that the stories hidden within its walls would provide the inspiration he sought. He began to research his family's past, poring over old journals and letters he found tucked away in the library. The more he learned, the darker the tales became. His ancestors had been plagued by betrayal and madness, with whispers of a family curse that had haunted them for generations. A great-uncle had gone mad, believing he was being tormented by the spirits of those he had wronged. A great-aunt had vanished without a trace, her fate a mystery that sent shivers down Jonathan's spine. One stormy night, as rain lashed against the windows, Jonathan felt compelled to confront the source of the whispers. He followed the sound through the dimly lit corridors, his heart pounding in his chest. The whispers led him to a hidden door at the end of a long hallway, one he had never noticed before. With trembling hands, he pushed it open. Inside was a small, dust-filled room, its walls lined with portraits of his ancestors. Their eyes seemed to follow him as he stepped further inside. In the center of the room stood an ornate mirror, its surface clouded with age. As he approached, the whispers grew louder, swirling around him like a tempest. "Who are you?" he called out, his voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" The air grew cold, and the mirror began to shimmer. Jonathan leaned closer, and to his horror, he saw not just his reflection but the faces of his ancestors, their expressions twisted in anguish. They reached out to him, their mouths moving in silent screams. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman with sorrowful eyes, her face familiar yet haunting. It was his great-aunt, the one who had vanished. "You must break the cycle," she whispered, her voice echoing in his mind. "The curse will consume you if you do not confront the truth." Jonathan's heart raced as he realized the weight of her words. The ambition that had driven him to write had also blinded him to the darkness that lurked in his family's past. He had to confront the betrayal that had led to his ancestors' suffering, to break the cycle of madness that threatened to claim him as well. With newfound determination, he began to write, pouring his heart and soul into the story of Blackwood Manor and its haunted legacy. As he wrote, the whispers transformed from tormenting echoes into guiding voices, leading him to the truth. He uncovered the betrayals that had torn his family apart and the love that had been lost in the chaos. As dawn broke, Jonathan finished his manuscript, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. The whispers faded, replaced by a profound sense of peace. He had faced the darkness of his lineage and emerged stronger, ready to embrace his future. With the sun shining through the windows, Jonathan stepped outside, the air fresh and invigorating. Blackwood Manor stood tall behind him, no longer a place of fear but a testament to resilience and redemption. He had not only found inspiration for his novel but had also uncovered the truth that would set his family's spirit free. In the heart of the city, where wealth and ambition intertwined, lived Victor Langley, a renowned art collector known for his exquisite taste and insatiable desire for rare pieces. His mansion, a sprawling testament to his success, was filled with masterpieces from every corner of the globe. Yet, despite his vast collection, there was one painting that eluded him, a hauntingly beautiful piece known as The Weeping Woman, rumored to be cursed. The painting had a dark history, said to bring misfortune to anyone who possessed it. Its previous owners had met tragic ends, a wealthy merchant who lost his fortune, a famous actress who fell into madness, and a prominent politician who vanished without a trace. Whispers of the painting's malevolence only fueled Victor's obsession. He was drawn to its beauty, convinced that it would complete his collection and elevate his status among the elite. One evening, while attending an exclusive art auction, Victor overheard a conversation about the painting's whereabouts. It was rumored to be hidden away in a private estate, owned by a reclusive artist who had long since abandoned the art world. Ignoring the warnings of the painting's curse, Victor set out to acquire it, determined to make it his own. After weeks of searching, he finally tracked down the estate, a dilapidated mansion on the outskirts of town, shrouded in mystery. As he approached, a sense of foreboding washed over him, but his desire for the painting drowned out any hesitation. He knocked on the door, and after a long pause, it creaked open to reveal the artist, an elderly man with wild hair and haunted eyes. "I know why you're here," the artist said, his voice trembling. "The painting is not what it seems. It brings darkness to those who seek it." Victor dismissed the warning, his greed blinding him. After a tense negotiation, he acquired The Weeping Woman, feeling a thrill of triumph as he hung it in his mansion. The painting was mesmerizing, its colors swirling with emotion, and Victor felt an immediate connection to it. But as the days passed, he began to notice strange occurrences. At night, he would hear whispers echoing through the halls, and shadows danced in the corners of his vision. The painting seemed to pulse with energy, drawing him closer, feeding on his darkest desires. Victor found himself consumed by ambition, his once healthy appetite for success morphing into an insatiable hunger for power and recognition. As he delved deeper into the art world, he became ruthless, sabotaging rivals and manipulating others to secure his position. The whispers grew louder, urging him to take more drastic measures. He began to lose touch with reality, his relationships crumbling as he alienated friends and family in his quest for greatness. One night, in a fit of rage, Victor confronted the painting, demanding to know what it wanted from him. The air grew thick with tension, and the whispers transformed into a cacophony of voices, each one filled with anguish. "Feed us," they cried. "Feed us your desires." Terrified yet entranced, Victor realized that the painting was not merely a work of art, it was a conduit for the souls of its previous owners, trapped in a cycle of greed and despair. They fed off his ambition, growing stronger as he spiraled further into obsession. The more he achieved, the more he lost himself. Desperate to break free, Victor sought out the artist once more, hoping to find a way to rid himself of the painting's curse. When he arrived at the estate, he found it abandoned, the artist nowhere to be found. Panic set in as he realized he was alone, trapped in a web of his own making. Returning to his mansion, Victor confronted the painting one last time. "I will not be your puppet," he shouted, but the whispers only grew louder, drowning out his defiance. In a moment of clarity, he understood that the only way to escape the curse was to destroy the painting. With trembling hands, he grabbed a nearby candlestick and smashed it against the frame. The glass shattered, and a blinding light erupted from the painting, engulfing the room. Victor felt a surge of energy, a release of the dark desires that had consumed him. But as the light faded, he realized the cost of his obsession. The painting lay in ruins, but the spirits of its previous owners were free, their anguished faces now serene. Victor fell to his knees, the weight of his actions crashing down upon him. He had sacrificed everything, his career, his relationships, and ultimately, his sanity, in pursuit of a fleeting desire. As dawn broke, Victor sat amidst the wreckage of his once prized possession, the whispers now silenced. He had escaped the curse, but at a terrible price. The mansion felt emptier than ever, a hollow shell of what it once was. With a heavy heart. The dining room was elegantly set, the table adorned with fine china and flickering candles casting dancing shadows on the walls. A group of 5 friends, Emma, Jake, Sarah, Tom, and Lisa, gathered to celebrate Emma's recent promotion. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, but beneath the surface, an undercurrent of tension simmered, unspoken grievances lurking in the shadows. As the evening progressed, the friends reminisced about their college days, sharing stories that masked the bitterness of their past. Emma, the host, beamed with pride, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Jake, her closest friend, seemed distant, his eyes darting around the room as if he were waiting for something to happen. "Let's play a game," Sarah suggested, her voice brightening the mood. "How about a round of truth or dare?" The others hesitated, exchanging glances, but eventually agreed, eager to lighten the atmosphere. The game began innocently enough, with laughter and playful dares. But as the rounds continued, the questions grew more personal, and the atmosphere shifted. Tom, emboldened by the wine, turned to Jake. "Truth or dare, buddy?" "Truth," Jake replied, his voice steady. "Who do you think is the most successful among us?" Tom asked, a smirk on his face. "Emma, obviously," Jake said, forcing a smile. But the tension in his voice was palpable. "Really? I thought you'd say yourself," Lisa chimed in, her tone laced with sarcasm. "After all, you've been so focused on your career lately." Jake's expression darkened, and the laughter faded. "I'm just trying to make something of myself," he snapped, the words hanging heavy in the air. The mood shifted again, and Emma attempted to steer the conversation back to lighter topics. But as the game continued, old wounds began to surface. Sarah, feeling emboldened, turned to Lisa. "What about you? You've been awfully quiet. Truth or dare?" "Truth," Lisa replied, her eyes narrowing. "Why did you really leave the group last year?" "You just vanished without a word," Sarah pressed, her voice dripping with curiosity. Lisa's face hardened. "I had my reasons. Some of us have to grow up and move on." "Or maybe you just couldn't handle the truth," Tom interjected, his tone mocking. "You were always the weakest link." The tension escalated, and the friends began to argue, their voices rising as accusations flew. Old betrayals and grievances spilled out, each revelation more shocking than the last. Emma felt a knot tighten in her stomach as she realized how deep the rifts ran among them. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness for a brief moment. When they returned, Jake was gone. "Where did he go?" Emma asked, her heart racing. "Probably just needed a breather," Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. As the group continued to bicker, they heard a loud crash from the kitchen. They rushed to investigate, only to find Jake lying on the floor, unconscious, a broken bottle of wine beside him. Panic set in as they called for help, but when they turned back, Tom was missing. "Where is everyone going?" Emma shouted, her voice tinged with fear. "This isn't funny." The remaining friends searched the house, calling out for Jake and Tom, but their voices echoed back in silence. The atmosphere grew thick with dread as they realized they were not alone. Someone was watching them, lurking in the shadows. Who would do this? Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Maybe it's someone among us," Lisa suggested, her voice trembling. "Maybe someone is seeking revenge for what we've done." The remaining friends exchanged nervous glances, the weight of their past actions hanging heavily in the air. Emma felt a chill run down her spine as she recalled the secrets they had kept from one another. Betrayals that had festered beneath the surface, unacknowledged and unresolved. As they gathered in the living room, the tension reached a breaking point. "We need to figure out who's behind this," Emma insisted. "We can't let fear tear us apart." But before they could devise a plan, the lights flickered again, and the door slammed shut, locking them inside. Panic erupted as they pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. The realization hit them, they were trapped. "Someone is playing a sick game with us," Sarah cried, her voice rising in hysteria. "We need to stick together." But as they huddled together, the lights went out once more, plunging them into darkness. When they flickered back on, Lisa was gone. When Clara received the call about her grandmother's passing, she felt a strange mix of emotions. She had always been distant from her grandmother, a woman shrouded in mystery and rumors of the occult. Clara had heard whispers of strange rituals and dark practices, but she had never paid much attention. Now, standing in the dimly lit attic of her grandmother's old house, she felt a chill run down her spine. Among the dusty boxes and forgotten relics, Clara discovered an ornate antique mirror, its frame intricately carved with symbols she didn't recognize. The glass was cloudy, but as she wiped away the dust, she caught a glimpse of her reflection. For a moment, she felt a strange connection to the mirror, as if it were calling to her. Ignoring the unsettling feeling, Clara decided to take the mirror home. She placed it in her bedroom, thinking it would add a touch of elegance to her decor. That night, as she prepared for bed, she glanced into the mirror and was startled by what she saw. Her reflection seemed distorted, her features warped in a way that made her feel uneasy. Shaking off the feeling, she turned away, dismissing it as fatigue. Over the next few days, Clara found herself drawn to the mirror. Each time she looked into it, she saw something different, shadows lurking behind her, fleeting images of herself that didn't match her reality. One moment, she appeared radiant and confident, the next, she looked haggard and haunted. The mirror seemed to reflect her darkest fears and insecurities, magnifying them until they consumed her thoughts. As the days turned into weeks, Clara's obsession with the mirror deepened. She began to spend hours staring into its depths, searching for answers to questions she couldn't articulate. The more she looked, the more she felt her grip on reality slipping. Friends and family noticed her change. She became withdrawn, her laughter replaced by a hollow silence. "Clara, are you okay?" her best friend, Mia, asked one evening as they sat in her living room. "You've been acting strange lately." "I'm fine," Clara replied, but the words felt hollow. She couldn't shake the feeling that the mirror was revealing truths about herself that she wasn't ready to confront. One night, as she gazed into the mirror, she saw a figure standing behind her, a dark silhouette that sent a jolt of fear through her. She spun around, but the room was empty. Heart racing, she turned back to the mirror, and the figure was gone, replaced by her own reflection, twisted and distorted. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The mirror seemed to pulse with energy, and she felt a wave of despair wash over her. It was as if the mirror was feeding on her fears, drawing her deeper into a spiral of madness. Clara began to experience vivid nightmares, each one more disturbing than the last. In her dreams, she was trapped in a dark room, surrounded by mirrors that reflected countless versions of herself, each one more grotesque than the last. She would wake up in a cold sweat, the images haunting her throughout the day. Desperate for answers, Clara researched the mirror's origins. She discovered that it had belonged to her grandmother, who had been rumored to practice dark magic. The mirror was said to reveal the true nature of one's soul, exposing hidden fears and desires. Clara's heart raced as she realized the implications. Was her grandmother's legacy now haunting her? One evening, Clara decided to confront the mirror once and for all. She stood before it, her heart pounding. "Show me the truth," she demanded, her voice echoing in the stillness of the room. The mirror shimmered, and suddenly, she was engulfed in darkness. She found herself standing in the same dark room from her nightmares, surrounded by the distorted reflections of herself. Each version of Clara taunted her, whispering her insecurities and failures. "You're not good enough," one sneered. "You'll never be happy," another hissed. Clara felt herself unraveling, the weight of their words crushing her spirit. "No! This isn't who I am," she screamed, but the reflections only laughed, their voices merging into a cacophony of despair. In that moment of desperation, Clara realized that the mirror was not just a reflection of her fears, it was a manifestation of her own self-loathing. She had allowed it to define her, to dictate her worth. With newfound determination, she reached out to the nearest reflection, her hand touching the cold glass. "I refuse to be defined by you," she shouted, her voice steady. The mirror trembled, and the reflections began to shatter, one by one, until only her true self remained. As the last shard fell away, Clara found herself back in her bedroom, the mirror intact but silent. Rachel had always been drawn to the quaint charm of small towns, so when she moved to Eldridge, she expected a peaceful life. The locals were friendly, albeit a bit reserved, and the scenery was picturesque. But as the harvest moon approached, an unsettling atmosphere settled over the town. The townsfolk buzzed with excitement, preparing for the annual harvest festival. Rachel noticed that the closer the festival got, the more secretive the residents became. They exchanged furtive glances and whispered in hushed tones, their smiles never quite reaching their eyes. Curiosity piqued, Rachel began to ask questions. "What's the festival really about?" she inquired at the local diner, where the townsfolk gathered. The waitress, a woman named Clara, hesitated before responding. "It's just a celebration of the harvest, dear. Nothing to worry about." But Rachel felt a gnawing sense of dread. She decided to investigate further, wandering through the town and observing the preparations. She stumbled upon a group of townsfolk gathered in a clearing, chanting in a language she didn't understand. They held hands, their faces illuminated by the glow of the harvest moon, and Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. That night, unable to shake the feeling of impending doom, Rachel returned to the clearing. She hid behind a tree, her heart racing as she watched the ritual unfold. The townsfolk formed a circle around a large stone altar, adorned with offerings of fruits and vegetables. But as the chanting grew louder, Rachel's stomach twisted in fear. She realized that the offerings were not just food, they were sacrifices. As the moon reached its zenith, a figure emerged from the shadows, a man dressed in dark robes, his face obscured by a hood. He raised a dagger high, and the crowd fell silent. "Tonight, we honor the harvest by giving thanks to the earth," he proclaimed. "We must offer a sacrifice to ensure our prosperity." Panic surged through Rachel as she realized the truth. The cult was preparing to sacrifice an outsider, and she was the only newcomer in town. She turned to flee, but the rustling of leaves alerted the townsfolk. They spotted her, their eyes filled with a fervor that sent chills down her spine. "Stop her!" the robed figure shouted, and the crowd surged forward, their intentions clear. Rachel ran through the woods, branches clawing at her skin as she desperately sought an escape. The sounds of pursuit echoed behind her, growing closer with each passing moment. Just as she thought she was trapped, Rachel stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin. She ducked inside, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the cultists outside, their voices growing louder as they searched for her. In the dim light of the cabin, Rachel spotted an old hunting rifle propped against the wall. With trembling hands, she grabbed it, praying it was loaded. The door creaked open, and the robed figure stepped inside, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Join us, Rachel," he hissed, his voice dripping with temptation. "You can be one of us. Embrace the harvest." With a surge of adrenaline, Rachel raised the rifle and fired. The shot rang out, echoing through the woods. The figure fell, and the cultists outside screamed in shock. Seizing the opportunity, Rachel bolted from the cabin and ran toward the town, determined to escape the nightmare. As she reached the edge of Eldridge, she glanced back to see the townsfolk gathering around the fallen figure, their faces twisted in rage. She knew she had to leave before they turned their wrath on her. Rachel drove away, the harvest moon shining brightly behind her. She had escaped the clutches of the cult, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. The town of Eldridge would remain a dark secret, a place where the harvest moon brought not just abundance, but also blood. The sun dipped below the horizon as a group of friends, Mark, Jenna, Alex, and Lisa, drove deeper into the woods, their laughter echoing in the car. They were excited for a weekend getaway at a remote cabin, a chance to escape the chaos of their busy lives and reconnect with nature. The air was crisp, and the scent of pine filled their lungs as they left the city behind. After a long drive, they finally arrived at the cabin, nestled among towering trees. It was rustic and charming, with a wooden porch and a stone fireplace. The friends unloaded their bags, eager to settle in and start their adventure. As they explored the cabin, they found it filled with old furniture, dusty books, and a few forgotten trinkets. It felt like a place frozen in time. That evening, they gathered around the fireplace, sharing stories and sipping wine. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, but as the night wore on, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She glanced out the window, but the darkness of the woods offered no answers. Are you okay? Mark asked, noticing her unease. Yeah, just. I don't know. It feels a little too quiet out there, Jenna replied, trying to brush off her anxiety. Come on, it's just the woods. Let's enjoy our time here. Alex chimed in, raising his glass in a toast. The next day, the group decided to explore the surrounding area. They hiked along a narrow trail, the sounds of nature enveloping them. As they ventured deeper into the woods, they stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin hidden among the trees. Its windows were boarded up, and the door hung slightly ajar. Let's check it out, Lisa suggested, her adventurous spirit igniting the group's curiosity. As they approached the cabin, a sense of foreboding washed over Jenna. I don't know, guys. This place looks creepy. Don't be such a scaredy cat, Alex teased, pushing the door open. It creaked ominously, revealing a dark interior filled with dust and cobwebs. The air was stale, and the floorboards groaned under their weight. Inside, they found remnants of a life long forgotten, faded photographs, rusted tools, and strange symbols carved into the walls. The atmosphere felt heavy, as if the cabin held secrets that had been buried for years. Look at this! Mark exclaimed, holding up a tattered journal he found on a dusty shelf. The pages were yellowed and filled with frantic scrawls. It's someone's diary. As they gathered around, Mark began to read aloud. The entries spoke of a reclusive community that had once thrived in the area, but had been abandoned after a series of mysterious disappearances. The last entry sent chills down their spines. They are coming for us. We must hide. The Forgotten Ones will not let us leave. What does that even mean? Jenna asked, her heart racing. This is just some old diary. Maybe it's a warning, Lisa suggested, her voice trembling. We should get out of here. But before they could leave, they heard a rustling sound outside. The friends exchanged nervous glances, and Jenna felt a knot tighten in her stomach. We should go back to the cabin, she urged. Reluctantly, they made their way back, but the unease lingered. That night, as they sat around the fire, the atmosphere grew tense. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to stretch and twist, and the wind howled outside, creating an eerie symphony. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the cabin was plunged into darkness. Panic set in as they fumbled for their phones, but the signal was weak. What's happening? Jenna cried, her voice rising in fear. Just a power outage, Mark reassured her, though his own voice wavered. Let's just wait it out. As they sat in the dark, the whispers began. Faint at first, they grew louder, echoing through the cabin. The friends strained to listen, but the words were indistinguishable, a haunting melody that sent shivers down their spines. Do you hear that? Alex asked, his eyes wide with fear. It's probably just the wind, Lisa replied, but her voice lacked conviction. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside, a gaunt man with hollow eyes and a wild beard. You shouldn't be here, he rasped, his voice gravelly. They'll come for you. Who will? Mark demanded, stepping forward. What do you mean? The Forgotten Ones, the man whispered, his gaze darting around the room. They don't like visitors. You must leave before it's... In the small, fog-shrouded town of Eldritch Hollow, the air was thick with secrets. The townsfolk rarely spoke of the old Eldritch Asylum, a crumbling structure that loomed on the outskirts, shunned and forgotten. It had been closed for decades, its dark history buried beneath layers of dust and time. But one stormy night, the local radio station, Weld 98.7, received a transmission that would change everything. The station's host, Clara Jensen, was known for her late-night talk show, where she delved into local legends and ghost stories. As she prepared for her broadcast, the static-filled transmission crackled through the airwaves. It was a voice, distorted yet eerily familiar, recounting tales of the asylum's past, stories of patients subjected to cruel experiments, whispers of spirits trapped within its walls, and a malevolent presence that fed on fear. Intrigued and unnerved, Clara decided to investigate. The next day, armed with a flashlight and her trusty recorder, she ventured to the asylum. The building was a decaying monument to despair, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. As she stepped inside, the air grew colder, and an unsettling silence enveloped her. Clara explored the dark hallways, her footsteps echoing against the peeling walls. She found remnants of the past, rusted gurneys, tattered patient files, and faded photographs of the once lively inhabitants. But it was the basement that drew her in, a place where the air felt thick with dread. As she descended the stairs, the temperature dropped further, and she could hear the faint sound of her own heartbeat. In the basement, Clara discovered an old radio transmitter, its dials covered in dust. As she approached, the device flickered to life, and the same distorted voice filled the room. It spoke of pain, suffering, and a hunger that could not be sated. Clara's heart raced as she realized the voice was not just a recording, it was alive, feeding off her fear. Panicking, she turned to leave, but the door slammed shut. The voice grew louder, echoing her thoughts, revealing her deepest fears and regrets. Clara had lost her younger brother in a tragic accident years ago, and the guilt had haunted her ever since. The voice twisted her memories, making her relive the moment of his death, amplifying her sorrow until it felt unbearable. Desperate to escape, Clara fought against the door, but it wouldn't budge. The voice taunted her, promising that if she surrendered to the darkness, she would be reunited with her brother. In that moment, Clara realized the truth. The asylum was a conduit for the tormented souls trapped within, and it thrived on the pain of the living. Summoning her strength, Clara focused on the love she had for her brother rather than the guilt. She remembered the laughter they shared, the dreams they had, and the bond that could never be broken. With that thought, she reached for the transmitter, determined to turn it off. As her fingers brushed the dials, the voice screamed in rage, the walls shaking with its fury. Clara twisted the knobs, and with a final surge of will, she shut the device down. The room fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting as the door creaked open. Clara stumbled out of the asylum, gasping for breath. The storm had passed, and dawn broke over Eldridge Hollow, casting a warm glow on the town. She returned to the radio station, shaken but resolute. That night, she broadcasted her experience, warning the townsfolk about the asylum and the darkness that lingered there. The transmission ceased, but the memory of that night remained etched in Clara's mind. She had faced her fears and emerged stronger, but the asylum still stood, a silent sentinel of the past. And though the broadcasts had stopped, Clara knew that the stories of Eldridge Asylum would never truly fade away. They would linger in the shadows, waiting for the next curious soul to uncover their secrets. As Clara settled back into her routine at Weld 98.7, the haunting memories of her encounter at the asylum lingered like a shadow. The townsfolk listened intently to her broadcast, some skeptical, others intrigued. A few even expressed a desire to explore the asylum themselves, drawn by the allure of its dark history. Clara felt a mix of responsibility and dread. She knew firsthand the dangers that lay within those crumbling walls. Days turned into weeks, and the story of the asylum became a local legend, sparking renewed interest in Eldridge Hollow. Clara received calls from listeners sharing their own experiences, strange noises, fleeting shadows, and dreams of the asylum that felt all too real. Each story added to the tapestry of fear and fascination surrounding the place, but Clara remained cautious. She had faced the darkness and emerged, but she knew it was still there, waiting. One evening, as Clara prepared for her show, she received an unexpected visitor. It was Tom, a local historian and self-proclaimed paranormal investigator. He had heard her broadcast and was eager to explore the asylum, convinced that it held the key to understanding the town's troubled past. Clara hesitated, recalling the voice that had tormented her, but Tom's enthusiasm was infectious. After some discussion, they agreed to investigate together, hoping to uncover the truth behind the asylum's dark legacy. The following weekend, armed with flashlights, cameras, and a sense of trepidation, Clara and Tom made their way to the asylum. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows as they approached the entrance. Clara's heart raced, but she steeled herself, determined to confront the darkness once more. As her fingers brushed the dials, the voice screamed in rage, the walls shaking with its fury. Clara twisted the knobs, and with a final surge of will, she shut the device down. The room fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting as the door creaked open. Clara stumbled out of the asylum, gasping for breath. The storm had passed, and dawn broke over Eldridge Hollow, casting a warm glow on the town. She returned to the radio station, shaken but resolute. That night, she broadcasted her experience, warning the townsfolk about the asylum and the darkness that lingered there. The transmission ceased, but the memory of that night remained etched in Clara's mind. She had faced her fears and emerged stronger, but the asylum still stood, a silent sentinel of the past. And though the broadcasts had stopped, Clara knew that the stories of Eldridge Asylum would never truly fade away. They would linger in the shadows, waiting for the next curious soul to uncover their secrets. As Clara settled back into her routine at Weld 98.7, the haunting memories of her encounter at the asylum lingered like a shadow. The townsfolk listened intently to her broadcast, some skeptical, others intrigued. A few even expressed a desire to explore the asylum themselves, drawn by the allure of its dark history. Clara felt a mix of responsibility and dread. She knew firsthand the dangers that lay within those crumbling walls. Days turned into weeks, and the story of the asylum became a local legend, sparking renewed interest in Eldridge Hollow. Clara received calls from listeners sharing their own experiences, strange noises, fleeting shadows, and dreams of the asylum that felt all too real. Each story added to the tapestry of fear and fascination surrounding the place, but Clara remained cautious. She had faced the darkness and emerged, but she knew it was still there, waiting. One evening, as Clara prepared for her show, she received an unexpected visitor. It was Tom, a local historian and self-proclaimed paranormal investigator. He had heard her broadcast and was eager to explore the asylum, convinced that it held the key to understanding the town's troubled past. Clara hesitated, recalling the voice that had tormented her, but Tom's enthusiasm was infectious. After some discussion, they agreed to investigate together, hoping to uncover the truth behind the asylum's dark legacy. The following weekend, armed with flashlights, cameras, and a sense of trepidation, Clara and Tom made their way to the asylum. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows as they approached the entrance. Clara's heart raced, but she steeled herself, determined to confront the darkness once more.
Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. They navigated the familiar hallways, the echoes of their footsteps mingling with the whispers of the past. Tom set up his equipment, eager to capture any paranormal activity, while Clara documented their findings in her notebook. As they ventured deeper into the asylum, they stumbled upon a room filled with old medical equipment and patient records. Clara's heart sank as she read the names of those who had suffered within these walls. Each file told a story of pain, and she felt a deep sense of empathy for the souls who had been trapped here. Suddenly, Tom's equipment began to beep erratically. He pointed to a shadow moving in the corner of the room. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she turned to look. The shadow coalesced into a figure, a woman in a tattered hospital gown, her eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. Clara recognized her from one of the photographs she had seen during her first visit. The apparition reached out, her voice a mere whisper, "Help us." Clara's heart ached. She realized that the spirits of the asylum were not just malevolent forces, they were lost souls seeking closure. The woman's presence was a plea for recognition, for someone to remember their suffering. Clara felt a surge of compassion and knew what she had to do. "Tom," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her, "we need to help them find peace." Together, they began to speak to the spirit, recounting the stories of the patients and acknowledging their pain. Clara shared her own experience, her guilt over her brother's death, and how she had learned to embrace love over fear. As she spoke, the atmosphere shifted, the air grew lighter, and the shadows began to recede. The woman's expression softened, and Clara could see gratitude in her eyes. With a final, lingering look, the spirit faded away, leaving behind a sense of calm. Tom's equipment fell silent, and the oppressive weight that had filled the room lifted. As they exited the asylum, Clara felt a profound sense of relief. They had not only confronted the darkness but had also brought a measure of peace to the souls trapped within. The experience had changed her, she was no longer just a storyteller but a bridge between the living and the dead. In the weeks that followed, Clara continued to share the stories of the asylum on her show, but now with a focus on healing and remembrance. The town began to hold annual vigils for the lost souls, honoring their memories and acknowledging the pain they had endured. Eldridge Hollow transformed from a place of fear into a community united by compassion. Clara had turned the last broadcast into a beacon of hope, reminding everyone that even in the darkest places, there is always a chance for redemption and healing. And as for the asylum, it stood as a testament to the past, no longer a source of terror but a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit.
Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. They navigated the familiar hallways, the echoes of their footsteps mingling with the whispers of the past. Tom set up his equipment, eager to capture any paranormal activity, while Clara documented their findings in her notebook. As they ventured deeper into the asylum, they stumbled upon a room filled with old medical equipment and patient records. Clara's heart sank as she read the names of those who had suffered within these walls. Each file told a story of pain, and she felt a deep sense of empathy for the souls who had been trapped here. Suddenly, Tom's equipment began to beep erratically. He pointed to a shadow moving in the corner of the room. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she turned to look. The shadow coalesced into a figure, a woman in a tattered hospital gown, her eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. Clara recognized her from one of the photographs she had seen during her first visit. The apparition reached out, her voice a mere whisper, "Help us." Clara's heart ached. She realized that the spirits of the asylum were not just malevolent forces, they were lost souls seeking closure. The woman's presence was a plea for recognition, for someone to remember their suffering. Clara felt a surge of compassion and knew what she had to do. "Tom," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her, "we need to help them find peace." Together, they began to speak to the spirit, recounting the stories of the patients and acknowledging their pain. Clara shared her own experience, her guilt over her brother's death, and how she had learned to embrace love over fear. As she spoke, the atmosphere shifted, the air grew lighter, and the shadows began to recede. The woman's expression softened, and Clara could see gratitude in her eyes. With a final, lingering look, the spirit faded away, leaving behind a sense of calm. Tom's equipment fell silent, and the oppressive weight that had filled the room lifted. As they exited the asylum, Clara felt a profound sense of relief. They had not only confronted the darkness, but had also brought a measure of peace to the souls trapped within. The experience had changed her. She was no longer just a storyteller but a bridge between the living and the dead. In the weeks that followed, Clara continued to share the stories of the asylum on her show, but now with a focus on healing and remembrance. The town began to hold annual vigils for the lost souls, honoring their memories and acknowledging the pain they had endured. Eldridge Hollow transformed from a place of fear into a community united by compassion. Clara had turned the last broadcast into a beacon of hope, reminding everyone that even in the darkest places, there is always a chance for redemption and healing. And as for the asylum, it stood as a testament to the past, no longer a source of terror but a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. The camera pans through a quaint, cluttered antique shop filled with various relics from different eras. Dust motes flowed in the sunlight streaming through the windows. The shop owner, Lucas, a man in his 40s with a keen eye for detail, arranges items on a shelf. He picks up an ornate mirror, its frame intricately carved but slightly tarnished. He glances at his reflection, then sets it down, feeling a strange chill. Int. Antique shop, back room, night. Later that evening, Lucas sits in the back room, going through a box of newly acquired items. He pulls out a beautiful porcelain doll with hauntingly lifelike eyes. As he examines it, he feels an unsettling energy radiating from the doll. He shakes off the feeling and places the doll on a shelf with other curiosities. Int. Antique shop, day. The next day, a customer enters the shop, drawn to the doll. She picks it up, admiring its craftsmanship. Customer. This is beautiful. How much? Lucas. Hesitant. It's $50. The customer smiles and pays. As she leaves, Lucas feels a sense of foreboding but dismisses it. Int. Customer's home, night. The customer, now at home, places the doll on a shelf in her daughter's room. That night, she hears soft whispering coming from the doll. She brushes it off as her imagination. Suddenly, the lights flicker, and the doll's eyes seem to follow her. The whispers grow louder, turning into a cacophony of voices. Int. Antique shop, day. Lucas is busy organizing the shop when he receives a frantic phone call from the customer. Customer, VO. Panicked. The doll. It's not right. It's whispering to my daughter. Lucas's heart races. He tries to calm her down. Lucas. I'll come over. Just stay calm. Int. Customer's home, later. Lucas arrives at the customer's home, where she is visibly shaken. The daughter is in her room, playing with the doll, seemingly unbothered. Lucas. To the daughter. Hey there, sweetie. Can I see your doll? As he approaches, the doll's eyes seem to glimmer with malice. Lucas feels a wave of dread wash over him. He takes the doll and examines it closely, noticing a small inscription on the bottom, beware the whispers. Int. Antique shop, back room, night. Back at the shop, Lucas researches the doll and discovers it belonged to a girl who mysteriously disappeared decades ago. The doll was said to be cursed, holding the spirit of the girl who never found peace. Suddenly, the lights flicker, and the atmosphere grows heavy. Lucas hears faint whispers echoing in the room. Whispers, V.O. Help me, find me. He realizes the doll is not the only cursed item in the shop. Int. Antique shop, day. Lucas decides to investigate other items in the shop. He finds a vintage music box that plays a haunting melody. As he opens it, the music plays, and he feels a chill run down his spine. He notices a small note inside, "Those who listen will never forget." Determined to rid the shop of these cursed items, Lucas decides to hold a sale, hoping to get rid of them quickly. Int. Antique shop, sale day. The shop is bustling with customers. Lucas watches nervously as people pick up various items, including the doll and the music box. He feels a sense of dread as he sees a family purchasing the music box. As they leave, he hears the whispers grow louder, echoing in his mind. Int. Family's home, night. The family sets up the music box in their living room. As they wind it up, the haunting melody fills the air. The children are entranced, but the parents feel an unsettling presence. That night, the children are awakened by the music playing on its own. They see shadowy figures dancing in the corners of the room, whispering their names. Int. Antique shop, day. Lucas is overwhelmed with guilt as he realizes the consequences of selling the cursed items. He decides to take action. He researches ways to cleanse the items of their curses. He finds an old book that details a ritual to release trapped spirits. Int. Scientific lab, night. The camera pans through a dimly lit laboratory filled with high-tech equipment, petri dishes, and cages containing various lab animals. Dr. Elena Kovacs, a brilliant but obsessive geneticist in her late 30s, is hunched over a microscope, her eyes wide with excitement. She scribbles notes feverishly, her hands trembling with anticipation. On the table beside her, a series of vials containing glowing, colorful serums are lined up. Elena. Muttering to herself. This is it, the breakthrough I've been waiting for. She glances at a large monitor displaying DNA sequences and genetic codes. A sense of urgency fills the air. Int. Scientific lab, later. Elena prepares to test her latest serum on a lab rat. She injects the serum into the rat, watching intently as it convulses for a moment before going still. A few moments later, the rat begins to twitch and grow, its body distorting grotesquely. Elena's eyes widen in horror and fascination as the rat transforms into a monstrous creature, its limbs elongating and its skin stretching. It lets out a horrific screech. Elena. Breathless. Incredible. Suddenly, the creature lunges at her, but she manages to slam the cage shut just in time. She stumbles back, heart racing. Int. Scientific lab, days later. Elena becomes increasingly obsessed with her experiments. She isolates herself from her colleagues, pouring all her time into perfecting the serum. The lab is now cluttered with failed experiments and grotesque creatures. One night, she decides to test the serum on herself, believing she can control the transformation. She injects the serum into her own arm, a mix of excitement and dread on her face. Int. Scientific lab, night, later. Hours pass, and Elena begins to feel strange. She looks in the mirror, and her reflection distorts. Her skin starts to ripple, and her fingers elongate, twisting into unnatural shapes. She gasps, horrified, as she watches her body transform. Her face contorts, and she screams, but the sound that comes out is a guttural growl. Int. Scientific lab, next day. Elena, now partially transformed, struggles to maintain her humanity. She hides in the shadows of the lab, avoiding her colleagues who are growing concerned about her absence. Her mind races with thoughts of power and control, but she also feels the primal instincts of the creature within her. She watches as her colleagues discuss her absence, unaware of her transformation. Scientific lab, night. Driven by hunger and rage, Elena attacks one of her colleagues, Dr. Harris, who has come to check on her. She lunges at him, her monstrous form barely recognizable. Harris screams as she overpowers him, her claws tearing into his flesh. The camera captures the horror of the moment, blood splattering against the walls. Int. Scientific lab, later. Elena, now fully transformed into a grotesque hybrid of human and beast, roams the lab, leaving a trail of destruction. The other scientists realize something is terribly wrong and barricade themselves in a room. They hear her growls and the sounds of destruction outside. Panic sets in as they realize they must escape before they become her next victims. Int. Scientific lab, hallway, night. The scientists attempt to escape through the back exit, but Elena is waiting for them. She lunges at them, her monstrous form a terrifying sight. One by one, they fall victim to her rage. The camera captures the chaos as the lab descends into madness, with Elena hunting down her former colleagues. Int. Scientific lab, final showdown. In the final confrontation, only Dr. Harris remains, injured but determined to stop Elena. He confronts her, holding a vial of the antidote he managed to create from her original serum. Dr. Harris. Pleading. Elena. You can fight this. You don't have to let it consume you. Elena hesitates, her monstrous eyes flickering with recognition. For a moment, the human side of her fights against the beast within. Elena. Growling. Help me. Harris approaches cautiously, holding out the vial. Just as he reaches her, the beast takes over, and she lunges at him again. Int. Scientific lab, aftermath. The lab is in ruins, and the camera pans over the destruction. Elena's